Today I want to show you how I use footage from the Mavic 3 and other cameras to create and tell a story through video. This quote has been a driving force in my life. People often ask me how I approach filming in Alaska as a solo creator. Beyond using good gear like the Mavic 3 or the Sony a7 IV, I'm constantly pushing and challenging myself to find angles and perspectives that are different. I'm looking for that one shot that will grab people's attention and tell a story. That means taking risks, but not in the way you might think. You might think the biggest risks I take are just getting to some of these epic places to film. Walking on a glacier, flying in a small plane or in a helicopter to get to some incredible location. But the truth is, I really don't risk as much as you think. Yes, there's risk involved in flying an aircraft, there's risk walking on a glacier, but the biggest risk I take day after day is the risk of failure. I risk coming back with 100 terrible photos or a drive full of unusable or mediocre shots. The biggest risk I take day after day is trying. Going out, trying something new, pushing myself and my equipment to its limits to try and capture a shot that will tell the story. The reality is, failure isn't the result of risk. Risking failure is the only path to success. Hey, my name's Jake and I create content here to help solo creators on the go, so I test and review lots of drones, cameras, lenses, other filmmaking equipment here in Alaska, and I give you tips and tutorials on how to use them. If that's something that interests you, consider subscribing. Today I want to break down for you why I picked the shots that I picked from all of the different cameras I used in order to tell the story that you just watched. I'll be doing more videos about this in the future, like actually taking you with me on the journey of going to film one of these things, and like when I'm on location, how I look for the shots that I know I want to capture and how I capture them. But for today, we're going to break down the edit process between all of these different cameras, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, which is Film Convert, who produces Cinematch and the Nitrate plugin for DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, and Final Cut Pro, which is my editor of choice. The cool thing is that they just released a plugin pack or an upgrade to the existing plugins that include the Mavic 3, the a7 IV, even the Red Komodo, and a few other things so that you can match those cameras up to other cameras that they have already in their plugin packs, which is fantastic for this particular story. But not only that, I've been using Cinematch for pretty much all of my color grading lately because it's a really powerful plugin and a really powerful color grading tool to be able to match up different cameras, even if they're not listed in their particular database of sensor level matching that they have. Now, telling a story through video really doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it a lot. A story is basically three parts: beginning, middle, and an end. It's a journey through a process to a conflict and a resolution where we learn something new and our lives are transformed. And that's really kind of, it's super simple breaking it down that way, but the beginning is the setup. It's what starts us on this journey. It's what takes us to a point where we're gonna walk down this path, which leads us to the middle, which is the kind of build up toward this conflict, this big climax, this thing that we have to overcome and wrestle through in order to be changed and transformed, which brings us to the end, the resolution of all of that, where we are now walking away with a new skill, something we didn't know before, where we've been changed and transformed as a person. And so this story being about risk, I wanted to challenge everybody, all of you, myself included, to go and take risks, because we are a very risk-adverse society because of our fear of failure, but really, risk is the only way we can learn and grow as creative people. And so, using all of the risks that I take as a creative person here in Alaska, between flying in helicopters and hiking to these places and all this, I wanted to talk to you or tell you the story about taking risk and how it's essential. So I came up with this narration and this script. I won't talk a lot about that, and obviously I had some music ready to go. Building the story on this narration was starting with this quote. This quote, I really do like this quote because it does challenge me regularly to remember to go out and risk failure. And then I wanted to start off, and this is all the setup. Obviously, I'm not in my studio. I'm out in a location that looks crazy or pretty amazing, hopefully. All of these shots here are building on the different things that the narrator is saying. Talk about the different types of equipment I use here in Alaska, and then talking about the risks that I take, because I get lots of comments about the risks I take. So all of these shots I selected because they reinforce and they build visually what the narrator is saying, what the narration is saying, and it helps to add impact and power to the words. And so that's an easy way there that you can start building a story if you're using something like a narration or titles on the screen or something like that, is using your visuals, using your video that you shot with a drone, with ground camera, whatever, to reinforce and to build visually what the story, what the narration is talking about. As we build this story up and talking about, flying in small aircraft and stuff like that, and here is where I did something a little different, and I transitioned to talking about how we need to take risks in order to learn and to grow. And this is where I kind of jump into the story about this lady experiencing ice climbing on a glacier for the first time in her life. And one of the things that you can use when you're storytelling is starting really close to stuff and keeping it very tight, very close shots so you don't reveal a lot of information. If you notice, I did this twice. I did this in the beginning where it's really tight on my face and you just see a reflection of the location in my sunglasses. And then I do it again here where I show crampons being put on the boots and they're drilling in the anchors into the ice. And so all of this is hopefully causing you to wonder what they're doing. And this story is all building up toward what I was talking about earlier in the story or earlier in the narration about a hero shot, capturing a hero shot, and how it takes a lot of risk to be able to go out and try and capture a whole story in one shot. So all of these shots are hopefully causing people to want to know what's going on. It hooks you, it causes you to want to go on this journey and to see what's going on. So we're showing all this roping up, getting harnessed in, and then learning about trusting the ropes. And again, still, I'm keeping these shots fairly tight, but still revealing more and more information to the audience. So here, like they're leaning back on the rope, learning to trust the rope. This was shot in the Mavic 3 Tele camera, which I absolutely love, by the way. Right here until she goes to actually take her first steps over the side, which to most people feels like a just massive risk to trust all of your body weight on that rope that you just drilled into the ice and then step over, where if you fail, you're going to end up very wet in an extremely cold pool of blue water. But she did, and then learning to use the ice axes, the ice picks to climb back up the side. All of that leading up to where I had coordinated with this helicopter pilot to fly overhead or nearby so that I could capture the entire story in one shot. Obviously, the climax here is that we pull back and we reveal the entire story, and then boom, that's the hero shot that I talked about earlier in the story, capturing this shot here where it told the entire story in one photo. And then we come to the resolution, which is kind of reiterating what we learned, how we were changed, how we were transformed through this process. She learned how to trust the rope, how to anchor herself off in the ice, and how to use ice picks and crampons to climb a vertical wall of ice. And she certainly had success, which actually I love this shot because they're high-fiving and definitely shows the level of like, yeah, we did this, we accomplished this. All while the narration here is reiterating the fact that risk doesn't result in failure, but if we don't take risks, we will never succeed. So in a sense, we will fail without risks, guaranteed, even though we think it's the other way around. And that's where Cinematch and Nitrate came in invaluable in this, because I had to shoot it on so many different cameras, because everything is moving fast paced. I'm using drones, I'm using a Mavic 3, I'm using A7 IV, GoPro, pretty much everything I can to capture this process as it's happening in real time. Cinematch became a really valuable tool and has become a really valuable tool. There are links in the description with a discount code and stuff like that for you if you want to get it yourself. But essentially, drag and drop the Cinematch plugin on there, open up the controls. Let me pull this over here so you can see it. And because they just released their Mavic 3 sensor level matching and a Mavic 3 pack for Nitrate, it made it really easy to match all of these cameras up. Essentially, I tell the software, this is a DJI Mavic 3, and I shot it in D-Log, and I want to match it to a Sony A7 IV, which is right there, and I shot all my A7 IV stuff in sgamut.cine, S-Log3. Now here it already kind of matches up a little bit, but here's where you can apply a 709 transform, which essentially applies a LUT that grades the image to where it looks pretty much like it was shot on that camera. If we take that off, that's what it looks like without. but obviously I wanted to match everything to the A7 IV. So grab this, change that there, and it changes and transforms the image. But that's not all I want to do, because I do want to color grade this. Obviously you can see my waveforms here are not quite where I want. And if I want to change the white balance, which is really crucial if you want to match cameras, getting the same white balance on everything becomes a really big part of that. You can click or tap there. You basically grab this little dropper tool here and you select an area somewhere on the screen that's pure white, which is one of the reasons I always carry a white balance card with me, is I can use that there. And it automatically adjusts the temperature and the tint. If you want to check your false colors to see what's actually white, white should stay white when you turn that on and off. And then you can mess with all your hue and saturation luma curves, which I did do to kind of match up some of the reds in other cameras like the GoPro and the A7 IV. And then here you have this really great secondary color corrections. You can adjust your highlights, you can change your saturation or the hue of your highlights, you can adjust your colors. You can turn your saturation up or down if you want to, or just reset that. And then I always like to throw in just a tiny little bit of an S-curve on this, just because I feel like it makes the footage look the way I want it to look. So that right there, actually I'm going to desaturate this just a touch. That is essentially exactly how I want this camera to look. So the A7 IV footage here, which, you know, looks the way it looks, and then we've got the Mavic 3 footage here. Mavic 3 footage, that might be a little contrasty. I think I'll pull the shadows up just a hair, maybe pull the midtones up just a touch, so it gets a little bit brighter here on the subjects. And this is where nitrate came in, because I filmed this on the Mavic 3 normal lens, or the telephoto camera, which has no log profile, no flat profile or anything like that. Getting it to match with the other, I used Cinematch for a little bit of color grading. I had to pull the midtones way up and then adjust the white balance just a tiny bit. This is where I used the nitrate plugin from Film Convert to just give it a little bit more of an organic feel. And nitrate essentially is a film emulation tool, so it adds grain and it adds some other different things that were inherent in the properties of film. So because they just released the camera pack, I picked DJI's Mavic 3 and it's a normal profile. And then I just kind of went through all of these different film packs that they've got and picked, I like this one the best. I just like the little bit of subtle stuff that this particular film emulation did to it. Now, I didn't like both of these at 100%. I liked it like more 60 something, and yeah, 60, 65 was really nice. You can get a lot more grain if you wanted to. And then you can also decide if you want it to be like 8mm film or 16mm film or Super 16, but 35mm full frame is what I wanted. So if you want to soften something up, you can do that by using this different film size emulation here. Obviously, it gets a little bit softer, a little more grainy, if that's something you like. But I really liked what this plugin in particular did for this particular shot and a couple of other shots in this. Hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more about my thought process approaching putting together a video using drone footage, other camera footage. If you want to learn more about this, you can click or tap right here, put together a playlist. I'll see you in one of those videos. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream on Wednesday nights, 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.